It's reteach time. I'm going to start with number 7, which is transformations of functions. So this one here, the parent function is the square root, because when I take away all the numbers, that's all that's left is the square root of x. My first transformation is a. A right here does not exist, so I'm going to move on to b. B is 2. That tells me I'm going to have a horizontal compression by 2, which means I'm going to divide x by 2. And if you don't remember that, refer to your notes that we took in class. So if you look at the graph, this x value is 0. 0 divided by 2 is 0. This x value is 1. 1 divided by 2 is 1/2. So now this point moves into 1/2. Notice that the y value stays the same. This x value is 4. So 4 divided by 2 is 2. So that now has an x value of 2. This x value is 9. I divide that by 2. So now this has an x value of 4.5. If you don't know how to get this parent function, then come see me, because it is one of our basic parent functions from the beginning of school. The second transformation is c, which is right here, but don't forget that we have to divide it by b. So c divided by b is 4 divided by 2, which is 2. So I'm not going to move right 4, I'm going to move right 2. So all of these points here shifted to the right 2 units. My final transformation is d, and this tells me to go down 6. So I move all of my points down 6. All right. The next problem we're going to be going over is number 11, and it asked us to graph based off of the factors. We're going to be doing number 11 and 12, so I can show you guys how to do the imaginaries. So here, my roots come from these factors. Remember to change the sign. There's no number here, so there's 2 roots at x or equals 0. One of them at +3 and one at -5. So I'm going to graph 0, 3, and -5. After I graph my points, I look at my end behavior. I have -x squared times x times x, and I'm getting that from right here, all my x's, multiplying them together. When you multiply those together, you get -x to the power of 4, which means that my arrows are both going to be pointing down. Again, refer to the chart if you don't know what I'm talking about. I've got a double root here at 0, so I have to remember to bounce off and not go through. So I'm going to start down, bounce off here, and go back down. And that's it. On number 12, you ignore these i's, so you don't count those as roots. The only root you have is right here at 0, right there, but you still have 3 x's. So that's x times x times x gives you x cubed. You're positive and odd, so you go down, up, and it's not linear, it is a cubic, so you have to curve it like such. All right, the next type of problem we're going to be going over is coming up with our function given our roots. So we need to make factors. These are our roots, so we need to change the signs. This is -4. My factor is x plus 4. This is one term, so it goes all together. X minus that term. This is another term. It's going to be x minus that whole term. At this point, there's a couple different ways you can go, but I'm going to distribute my negatives first. The negatives go to the 1 and the 4i on both. So you have x minus 1 minus 4i and x minus 1 plus 4i. This x plus 4 stays the same. And then it's just foiling from there. When you FOIL, always FOIL your imaginaries first. X times x is x squared. X times negative 1 is negative x. And x times 4i is plus 4ix. Now we have to do that for the 1 and the 4i. Negative 1 times x is negative x. Negative 1 times negative 1 is positive 1. And negative 1 times 4i is negative 4i. Negative 4i times x is negative 4ix. Negative 4i times negative 1 is positive 4i. And negative 4i times positive 4i gives you negative 16i squared. We're going to combine like terms, and then from there you guys should know how to FOIL. So I've got one value of x squared that's going to stay there. So I've used that one. I've got a negative x and a negative x, so that's going to give me negative 2x. So I've used those. I've got a positive 4ix and a negative 4ix. Those just cancel. I've got a positive 1 that doesn't combine with anything else yet. I've got a negative 4i and a positive 4i that those cancel. And then I've got this negative 16i squared. Remember that I squared is equal to negative 1. So if I say negative 16 times negative 1, you should tell me positive 16. From there you can add the 1 and the 16 to get positive 17. And then you would keep foiling as if you never had imaginary numbers to begin with. But I really wanted to go over that imaginary part. The rest of it you guys seem to be okay with. Moving on to number 15. This is a polynomial that we are asked to factor completely. Since I have 3 terms, it is considered a trinomial, and I'm going to use my AC method. So this is my A, this is my B, this is my C. I'm going to multiply A times C. 3 times negative 8 gives me negative 24. And I'm going to make a factor tree for negative 24. 1 and 24. Make one of them negative, or negative 1 and positive 24. You keep going. 2 and negative 12, or negative 2 and positive 12. You can have 3 and negative 8, or negative 3 and positive 8. I'm going to start over here. You can also have 4 and negative 6, or negative 4 and positive 6. And then it's not divisible by 5. So those are all my factors that I have to choose from. They need to add to give me B, which is negative 2. So looking at my factors, the only ones that add to give me negative 2 are 4 and negative 6. So I'm going to write down my factors: x plus 4, x minus 6. Here the signs stay the same as what you circled. Signs stay the same. I'm not done yet. Most of you forget these last 2 steps, so be careful. We need to divide both of these terms, the 4 and the negative 6, by a, which is 3. When you do that, you need to reduce. This one does not reduce. So when it does not reduce, you take your denominator and throw it in front of x. If it does reduce, then reduce it. So here my final answer is 3x plus 4 times x minus 2. All right, last one for the reteach is y'all's favorite, rational root theorem. Many of you guys roll your eyes at this one because it's 7 steps, but on the test I only asked you to do 6 steps. So we're going to go all the way until we get our factors. So step 1 is to identify P and Q. P is always the constant, and Q is always your leading coefficient. So my factors of P are 1, 3, 9, and 27. My factors of Q are 1 and 2. So then you take all your p's, divide them by all your q's, not q divided by p, only p over q. It's plus and minus because we have to include our negatives now. 1 divided by 1 is 1. 3 divided by 1 is 3. 9 divided by 1 is 9. 27 divided by 1 is 27. Don't stop here. 1 divided by 2 is 1/2. 3 divided by 2 is 3/2. 9 divided by 2 is 9/2. And 27 divided by 2 is 27/2. You have to have all of these written out. Now it's time to try them out using synthetic division. So I'm going to take a 1 and I'm going to synthetically divide. My first coefficient is 2, then -8, then 15, then -27. You bring down the first term. 1 times 2 is 2, and then you add -6. 1 times -6 is -6, plus 15 is 9. 1 times 9 is 9. That's not going to give us what we want. We want a 0 at the end. I'm going to infer that when I try a -1, I'm still not going to get what I want, so I'm going to go straight for 3. Synthetically divide to -8, 15, and -27. Bring down the 2. 3 times 2 is 6. When I add, I get -2. 3 times -2 is -6. And here I get a 9. 3 times 9 is 27, and look at that, I get a 0. So do not forget that 3, and do not forget to change the sign of the 3. So your first factor is going to be x minus 3. That is a very important step. Do not forget that. The next step is to take these coefficients and write your next factor. So that's going to be 2. And then since we started with x cubed, I'm going to go down to x squared. Then minus 2x plus 9. All right, we're not done yet. We have to see if this will factor. So you take a times c, 2 times 9, and you get 18. Factors of 18 are 1 and 18, 2 and 9. None of that's going to add to give me that -2. So this right here is actually our final answer. If you cannot factor, you stop right there, and there's nothing left that you can do. If you were able to factor, you would continue to factor. I hope this helped you, and good luck on your retest.